I want to tell you about Miss Thelesa. She's going to talk to us today about domestic violence. And this is something that's really dear to my heart. I'm a social worker, certified counselor. So a lot of times I walk into a lot of situations where there has been abuse or neglect, whether that's a child or an adult. But you know, it's something that happens from day to day. And many times, just like the whole movement of Black Lives Matter, it gets looked over. Or we just kind of don't say nothing, like it just never happened, or we're not sure what to do. Or here's my least favorite. Oh, she ain't gonna leave no way. Ain't no sense in doing it. Leave them alone, you know. Or the other least favorite is that's their business. What happened between a man and a woman, that's just they man and that woman's business. This guy told me that one time. I was like, he done lost his mind. I was like 911 while he done lost his mind because we were in an open place in a public library outside. I just like couldn't believe it. I was like, you know, do something. But it wasn't for that person to do something, I guess. It was for me to do something. So I couldn't beat the dude up because he was a dude, but I did hit 911 and I did get to hollering and screaming and fussing and stuff like that. So with that being said, you know, we have some alarming rates of abuse that happen these days. We have 1 out of 3 women that are being abused, 1 out of 4 men that are being abused, right? And even stalking is at an alarming rate. 1 out of 7 are being abused. And just think about this, at least 20,000 calls a day nationwide are for domestic violence, right? And that's not even including other type of abuse, you know, like sex trafficking and things like that. But definitely we want to bring Miss Thelesa on and help us just recognize what are some of the signs of abuse, because sometimes we don't recognize it. We think it may have to be physical, but that's not always the case. So Miss Thelesa, tell us a little bit about you and how you got interested in this topic in the first place. Why is it so dear to your heart?
Well, this topic is so dear to my heart because I too am a domestic, was in a domestic violence situation myself. And I personally almost lost my life. And out of fear and many years, it took me many, many years to just take a stand and say, okay, I want to help other women just for that fear, just for living in fear alone, because sometimes fear alone will paralyze you.
Right.
And so, but I want to make sure that I was taking responsibility and be able to just to help some other woman through it, and just whether hold her hand or just make ladies and girls more aware.
Right. So what are some of the signs that, especially young girls, what are some of the signs that we can look for, you know, to recognize that this is not a healthy relationship?
One of the signs of being in a toxic relationship for like young girls as well as young adults as well is that tracking. If you have someone that's always tracking you, wanting to know your whereabouts at all times, whether they're texting you all the time or texting you angrily or constantly leaving you messages or bad messages, that's one form of there as well. And isolating you from your family or friends. If you find that the person that you're with is wanting you to spend more time with maybe their family or be amongst around their family and not wanting to support you with your family and your functions, then that's leading towards a toxic relationship. And most of the time in the relationships, yeah, they may start off really sweet and then turn into, you know, sour. And so I call it like the honeymoon stage.
Right. So we got that cycle of abuse, right?
Cycle of abuse, right.
Okay.
And it may start off like be negative put downs, like start telling you that you're not anybody, you're not important, or you know, I'm the only one that loves you, or then I don't love you. Just that back and forth. Just that back and forth, and which keep your mind in a state of confusion.
Right.
Number one is isolating you from your family and friends.
Yeah.
And then it might start with the physical abuse as well as the verbal abuse, because even though there may not be any hitting, that verbal abuse it's enough to scar you.
Yeah. And what are your thoughts on this? When the guy starts, or the girl, I shouldn't say either way, but because it happens both ways, right?
Yes.
So what do you say when they're like, blame it on the other person? Well, if you didn't just make me so mad, well, it's because, well, and here's another one. Well, I've been having a hard time. It was hard for me I just lost a job.
You are only responsible for your own self and your own actions. We are never responsible for anybody else's choices. And that's what a lot of domestic abuse ladies and girls don't understand, that it's nothing that you said or done. This is something that's in that person, was in them, came out, and you're not responsible for anybody else's behavior.
Right.
And there is consequences for behavior, for bad behaviors. You don't have to stay in relationships like that. It's unhealthy.
That's true. So what would you suggest? Because when school is in, sometimes it's easier to talk to maybe a counselor, or it's even easier for somebody on the outside to notice. Maybe they'll see some scars or some bruising, or they might see that the girl is just not hanging out with her friends. So that's another good way that parents can even recognize too. If your son or your daughter is like, they stop eating, or they stop hanging out and doing the things that they really enjoy doing, or if they just seem way more sad than usual, that's when a time we can start asking some detailed questions, and find out who they're hanging around with. What are they doing?
And sometimes parents don't always know that they're going through abusive situation. So they out of fear, they may not even tell their parents.
Right.
The parents may just notice that something has changed about them, but they don't know quite what it is. And then if they're being threatened, that's another big one too. If they're being threatened, they're not going to tell their parents. Now they might confide in a friend or so, but if the friend is the same age as them, they may not give them direct them to a good outlet.
Right.
For help.
Yes. Right.
So
it's best to, what is a good outlet you think for like a young girl, and what's a good outlet for an older lady as well?
For a young girl, I would make sure that she has maybe like an aunt or sister, or someone that she can go and talk to and confide in. Because like I said, again, they may not always be comfortable with their parents, but they might trust that auntie, because that auntie is because the parents, they know if daddy or mom find out about it, they're going to go after that guy or so. Where auntie are kind of like help kind of walk them through it. And if they're in fear, then they won't tell anybody.
Right.
So I would suggest that they go with a family, a good family friend, or either if they're in church, consult their pastor or one of the mothers in church. But the thing is to get help and go somewhere.
Right.
And if it's an adult want to contact like the National Domestic Violence Hotline, they can start here. They can start.
And do you have that number where you can give for them?
Yes, that number is 1-800-799-7233.
7233. Okay. So the domestic violence hotline number will be 1-800-799-7233. So if you know someone who is being abused, or I shouldn't say abused, but in a domestic violence situation, it will be good for you to be able to give them that phone number, but to keep them safe, you might want to ask them first before you just write it down, because sometimes they have to hide their cell phones, their cell phone numbers, pieces of paper, because like Miss Thelesa was saying, a lot of times if guys are stalking you and they're trying to keep you isolated, even if it's a form of, you say, hey, I want to go out with my friends, and like, they're not always going to be avert and be like, I don't want you to go. Like, you don't need to do that. It might just be like, no, let's just stay home tonight. Let's just cuddle up. But let's just stay home all the time. Come on now.
Right.
Something's up with that, right? And that just brings us to this, with COVID-19 going on, or just kind of coming out of that a little bit. Even some states are going back into some isolation, or making sure that we wear masks more, things like that. It is really important to start opening our eyes and look beneath the surface, especially, like I said, if you have some younger kids at home, just really start asking them those detailed questions. Find out who they talking to and who their friends are, who they hanging out with online, where they hanging out online, because they have a lot of what I call hidden things going on that we don't know about. Snapchat used to be a thing that we didn't know about, so we learned about Snapchat. Now they got a whole bunch of other things going on online, and everybody pretty much has a phone, and so that's really important. So just to sum it up for us today, Ms. Thelesa, I want to thank you for joining us and sharing your knowledge with us today. Tell us just like what are uh, three things that you would talk to a woman about if you knew she was in that situation and she was scared to leave? I mean, without saying anything negative about her partner, what are three things you would say to her?
I would tell her, number one, that it's that she is not responsible for anybody else's actions. She's only responsible for her own. And her first thing to do is to get to safety and to get out of the relationship immediately. And it's a little bit harder too when you have children involved, or if you're married or so, because sometimes you can't just pick up and just leave just like that. So you want to start preparing. You want to make sure that you have like your legal documents and things all together. So because once you go, make sure that you're gone and don't come back.
Yeah. And I understand, like, sometimes it's easier said than done, but it's important to get it done, especially if you have other kids, other lives, people depending on you. So one thing I would say to a lady is that you are valuable, that you are loved, and you are not alone, and that there is some place to go. There are people that will help you. I know a lot of times it may seem like the shelters are full, but there is still some place always to go, in one place that you can go, even if you think the shelters are full or don't know if they're full or not, is go to a hospital and say something to somebody, because it's really important. And again, I want to give you that phone number for the domestic hotline. That's 1-800-799-7233. Thank you for joining Miss Michelle Cruz. We're getting ready to get off here right now. You have any last words for us, Miss Thelesa?
I just want to say thank you for giving me an opportunity, because this is a difficult conversation to have. It's a lot of times it's one conversation that gets swept under the rug, but we want to make sure that we keep this in the forefront of our minds, because you may not be involved in a domestic violence situation, but you may know of someone that's involved. And we just want to make sure that they be able to get to safety and get the help, and just know that they're not alone.
For sure.
Even after coming out of a domestic violence situation, there's also programs of hope out there too as well, to help restore you and bring you back hope. And one of those programs that we're getting ready to start up is that Gateway of Hope. It's called Restoring Hope. So I just wanted to put a plug in for that. That's going to be kicking off actually Monday, June the 22nd.
Okay. Now, will that be online, the Gateway of Hope?
There's going to be a free information meeting on Zoom on Gateway of Hope website. There's more information on that site.
Sounds wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing with us. I appreciate you being on here today. And again, if you know of somebody in a situation, please approach them and say something. Before you leave anything written, ask them if it's okay. It may be safer to put it in their phone, or I don't know, you just need to ask sometimes.
Yes.
Okay, because the main thing we want to do is keep safety amongst those women and men that are going through something. And we also want to make sure that, we are just keeping this in front of us, keeping this aware of it. I know there is a certain month of the year that we talk about domestic violence more than others, but I think if we want to be able to really make a difference, a lot of times we need to talk about something more than once a year. Kind of like Black History. February just won't do it. I mean, what do we learn? We got 30 days out of 12 months, and so it's really important that we keep up with different things. And so thank you again for joining us. It's been such a pleasure. Love you guys. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, please hit subscribe and like. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.